today's World Insight, Chinese President Xi Jinping gathers with his Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Tajik, Turkmen, and Uzbek counterparts at the second China Central Asia Summit in Astana. How can the meeting forge a closer community toward a shared future amid global headwinds? What's on the agenda?
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Wang Guan, sitting in for Tian Wei. Chinese President Xi Jinping has delivered the keynote at the second China Central Asia Summit in Astana, Kazakhstan. In his speech, President Xi Jinping stressed the China Central Asia spirit, which focuses on mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual benefit, and mutual assistance for the joint pursuit of modernization through high-quality development. He also said that all summit parties are signing a treaty on permanent good neighborliness, friendship, and cooperation to enshrine the principle of everlasting friendship. Now, before we buckle down to a discussion on these issues, CGTN's Tian Wei weighs in on the summit from Astana, Kazakhstan.
Yes, indeed. I'm standing on the second floor of the Independence Palace in the center of Astana, where the second China Central Asia Summit just wrapped up. The significance of this summit is certainly well known and widely recognized. At a time when the surrounding regions of Central Asia are tangled in conflicts, China's proposed global security initiative and China's emphasis on common and comprehensive security seem to echo very well in this region and addresses the concerns of Central Asian countries. As for the Central Asian countries, after talking to many on the sidelines of the summit, I noticed that they see the partnership with China as a deep, multifaceted cooperation grounded in what they call strategic and pragmatic interests. So what are these interests? Regional security and stability, economic modernization, diversification of diplomatic portfolios, just to name a few, and of course, trade. Many are struggling in the world with the U.S. tariff war against the rest of the world. The Central Asian economies have realized that there is only one way that they can get even stronger themselves to weather all the storms, building stronger partnerships, that is, with reliable partners, as the Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan told me earlier on Tuesday. Listen to this.
The relations, the trade relations, the turnover between China and Kazakhstan, between China and Central Asia, absolutely independent of these tariffs, yes?
That's the Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan. He also talked to me about cooperation between China and his country and the region on AI and building digital infrastructure. Of course, we're going to bring you more in-depth discussion about that later in our program this week. So it is fresh out of the oven, though, the news that Central Asian countries and China signed more than 35 memorandums on Tuesday alone, worth $17 billion and beyond, at the just concluded second meeting of the China Central Asia Business Council, also here in Astana. From green energy, infrastructure to logistics, trade, and the creation of new hubs, it's comprehensive and multifaceted. As Central Asian economies develop rapidly over the past few years, green and sustainable development, I noticed during our reporting trip this time in Kazakhstan, has really become the priority for everybody. I've been talking to many of them here in the region, and what I hear is green, 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 such as what the Vice Minister of Energy from Kazakhstan told me. No wonder China made EVs that are bring carbon-free transportation for Central Asian economies are very much welcomed here. And also the news that Chinese enterprises are making investment in the region, which means a boost for supply chain collaboration on the green development, one of the most crucial things, one would assume, in a turbulent world. Overall, it is very clear China is happy for the cooperation with Central Asian economies, as indicated clearly by China, to have the Central Asian economies to ride with China on the journey to prosperity and peace together. Back to you in Beijing. For the very first time, the China Central Asia Summit is being held in Central Asia, and I am in Astana, talking to the speakers and delegates to find out exactly what it all means for for the region. With a deeper connection in politics, trade, and transportation links between China and Central Asia. Where uncertainty provides a global backdrop, but where multiple engagements become the norm. Join me for a World Insight special, Connecting Central Asia.
Now to unpack the significance of the second China Central Asia Summit, we have a group of panelists in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. We have Dr. Kuat Alkizanov, Deputy Director of Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Institute. In Shanghai, we have Zhang Xin, Associate Professor, School of Politics and International Relations at East China Normal University. And in Nicosia, Cyprus, we have Asel Tutumlu, Associate Professor in Political Science from Near East University. Now, welcome to World Insight on CGTN. Let me ask you first, Professor Zhang Xin. We've heard from the Chinese president a major announcement here that China and Central Asia will sign a treaty announcing really the come of age of China-Central Asia interactions, the permanent good neighborliness, friendship, and cooperation. How big, how important is this piece of treaty?
This piece of treaty, as well as the summit itself, is significant. Firstly, because this is a very strong sign that the five Central Asia China collaborative mechanism is now fully institutionalized. The first summit was held in Xi'an 2 years ago. Now, as the second summit is held in Central Asia for the first time of such a C+5 forum, it indicates that this kind of China-Central Asia top-level state-to-state collaborative mechanism is fully institutionalized. Second, the peace of deal, as well as the President Xi's speech in Astana, also raise, I think, a central theme for Central Asia-China collaboration, which is a common modernization. This kind of phrase and general concept, for me, is the first time raised at this level. I think it will be a guideline for future Central Asia-China collaboration. So the concept of common or joint modernization will be the guiding principles for this kind of relation in the future, and it will be expressed in a set of economic, cultural, political, concrete deals signed between Central Asia and China in this forum, as well as in the future. I think this is also very significant development in Central Asia-China collaboration.
Professor Tutumlu, let me turn to you in Nicosia, Cyprus. Now, this is the first of its kind treaties China has ever signed with its neighbors, announcing a permanent, eternal good neighborliness that is really an echo to your president, President Tokayev, who cannot really emphasize enough the importance of having this eternal good neighborliness. And also, this is a new milestone, according to President Xi Jinping, during his address to the summit, a new milestone in the history of China-Central Asia interactions. How important or significant do you think this announcement of eternal good neighborliness will carry China-Central Asia relations going forward?
Well, I think there are two things that we need to consider. The first thing is that we've already had very strong and significant partnership agreements, eternal friendship agreements on a bilateral basis. The fact that now we actually going to have the possibility of a regional big, grand agreement that basically sets the foundation for further institutionalization of partnership, I think is really, really strong. And it actually reflects it consolidates and reflects everything that has been done before that, particularly the economic cooperation, the trade cooperation, the people-to-people cooperation in the region. So, and secondly, as well, it's very important for geostrategic reasons, particularly given the fact that there is a Russian war in Ukraine, and some of the Russian politicians have continuously threatened, or at least used threatening rhetoric against Kazakhstan, challenging the possibility of Kazakhstan being a sovereign state. And so the fact that we are having these geopolitical guarantees, let's say, on a regional basis, not just on the bilateral basis, again, sets a very strong security foundations for all Central Asian states against any possibility regarding potential conflict.
Yeah, I mean, as many experts would point out that, chauvinism didn't work, imperialism didn't work. After all, the independence of sovereign states matter most of all at the end of the day. Now, Dr. Akizanov, you're also from Kazakhstan, that is your home country, right? But also you're doing research in Urumqi, China, for this very important institute linking China and Central Asia. Now, President Xi, during his address to the second summit, he talked about this China-Central Asia summit, China-Central Asia spirit, rather, based on mutual respect, mutual benefit, treating each other as equals, no condescension, no monopoly on the narratives of this relationship. What is your understanding of a China-Central Asia spirit?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I would first of all highlight that this year China-Central Asia Summit in Astana reaffirmed the maturity and strategic depth of this multilateral mechanism. Well, the key takeaways include the strengthened commitment to practical cooperation in trade, for example, in connectivity, and of course in green development, as it was mentioned, and the deepening of institutional partnerships, such as those with multilateral platforms like the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program. For the first time, the summit emphasized localized integration, which is about policies and investments tailored to the development needs of Central Asian economies. So the emphasis on digital infrastructure, for example, and regional energy interconnection stands out as an acknowledgement of future-oriented cooperation. That, in turn, means how it is important to build this kind of equal relations between China and Central Asian economies. Okay, and so here we are talking about actually of a shared future, which is not just rhetorical. It's a strategic imperative. In a time of global instability and regional vulnerability, it means building economic complementarities, enhancing multilateral coordination, and pursuing human development goals jointly. Regional solidarity now means joint food and energy security strategies, for example, and climate action and harmonized connectivity as standards. It also means protecting the region's sovereignty while resisting external fragmentation. We do witness, for example, unfortunately, on the everyday basis now, how this kind of neo-imperialist, ideas now taking place in the genocidal war in Gaza, for example, or in this conflict between Iran and Israel, and the trust to these global players, is zero now. Okay, so the importance of China and Central Asian relationships now, highlights the importance of mutual trust and cooperation. Okay. So from the perspective of the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, this vision aligns with the idea of regional public goods solutions that benefit all members' countries by addressing cross-border challenges cooperatively.
Great insights. Now, Professor Zhang Xin, in announcing this China-Central Asia spirit, President Xi not only coined this new diplomatic phrase where terminology matters in diplomacy, but many would think that he's really, talking about the reality of China-Central Asia relations, which have been a relatively young diplomatic engagement, which only materialized since the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s. Despite all that, President Xi said that all sides have blazed a new trail in forging this China-Central Asia spirit. So what do you think is at the core of China-Central Asia spirit, and what made it unique in international relations?
There are probably multiple layers of Central Asia-China spirit. I would build on the previous speaker's comments, highlight two things. One is, as I just mentioned, joint development. joint modernization. The second is that this joint development is built on respect. Respect for sovereignty, political sovereignty, but also respect as individual civilizations. Right? For me, who work in this field, over the past 1 or 2 years, one thing I heard from my Central Asian colleagues, as well as researchers on this region, is a very strong consensus, very solid consensus that those China Central Asia C5+1 platform, as well as other similar platforms between Central Asia and other important regional and global actors, are providing new agencies for all Central Asian countries. These new agencies, I think, is very important for all 5 Central Asian countries, and that this highlighted, elevated agencies for Central Asian countries are also important, implied part of a Central Asia China spirit. And then, other than the general concept, abstract policy advocacies, but we also see as our host just mentioned, we also see very concrete development. Our previous speakers already comment on the very positive development of bilateral trade. Also, we have witnessed some very important new elements in economic collaboration, particularly including all kinds of AI technology, green technology. Those are relatively new additional components in Central Asia-China economic collaborations. Those are very concrete examples of how Central Asia-China spirit manifests itself in very concrete policy sphere.
They have manifested themselves in very concrete terms. A lot can happen in the span of 2 years, and a lot did happen from the first Central Asia Summit in Xi'an 2 years ago until now. If you think about it, during President Xi Jinping's keynote to the second summit, he pointed out a series of very interesting and important numbers. For example, 13 ministerial-level consultation mechanisms have been established over the 2 years, 100 sister cities between China and Central Asian cities. Trade increased by 35%. And between our 2 countries, China and Kazakhstan, 1.2 million travels have been made between our 2 countries, which of course happened in a large part thanks to a visa-free arrangement. Professor Tutumlu, what aspects of cooperation do you find most exciting and consequential between China and Central Asia in the past 2 years? Perhaps you can focus on China and Kazakhstan, your country.
Sure. Well, particularly for a person who's coming from Kazakhstan, it's logistics and trade. These are the most consequential, although, of course, from the perspective of just the regular people, you are going to see a change in a way how China is indeed perceived, compared, for example, to a very strong anti-Chinese sentiment in 2016. But in the present, for example, Kazakhstan is responsible for 80% of all the container traffic to the European Union. And therefore, China cooperation between Central Asia and China really enables to fully unlock that potential, because before, the majority of goods were actually traveling through the, so to say, Northern Corridor, going through Russia. And now, with existing geopolitical conditions, the importance of middle corridor becomes really, really strategic. And China has been establishing the foundation for this type of logistical transfer links. There are still bottlenecks, but Central Asian states are working very closely in cooperation with China to basically ease these specific bottlenecks and really improve the connectivity, taking the goods from China to the European Union. We have seen an immense growth of rail traffic, the container traffic, despite the fact, for example, that we have different gauges that are incompatible with the train, but nonetheless, the container trains are really, really improving. We have also seen the growth in trade, in the volume of goods as well. both crossing across the Central Asia, but also trading between Central Asian states and China. China is basically really present in creating these logistical hubs, particularly when it comes down to a railroad like Dostik-Mointe, which will ease the traffic 5 times. It's a rail connection, particularly also the rail connection between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, which is it's a very strong let's say it's a very costly project. It's $8 billion, but it can also save 7 to 8 days of traffic time from China going all the way, linking Kashgar and Andijan in Uzbekistan. So in that sense, we do see very impressive growth in trade and logistics and connectivity projects in the past 2 years.
Exactly. Talking about connectivity, we cannot ignore China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan railway, which is all part of the corridor linking China and Europe. I'm so glad you touched upon the middle corridor, which goes through Azerbaijan, the Caspian Sea, and which is turning out to be the shortest route connecting China
Absolutely.
and Europe, shorter and faster and more efficient than the northern route going through Russia, or the southern route, which has to go through the Persian Gulf, which of course in the middle of a major conflict, which we will touch upon very shortly. Dr. Akizanov, what is the promise of China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, which is finally under construction after years, if not decades, of trilateral, multilateral negotiations?
First of all, I would say that this is an example when there are practical advantages I have in place now after all this cooperation, that it's not just all about kind of building geopolitical alliances. No, it has this cooperation between our countries and among our countries, shows that at the end of the day, it's all for the benefits of the people. So as for the China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan railway, this project will significantly enhance east-west freight capacity, and it offers a shorter, efficient alternative to traditional northern routes. Economically, it reduces shipping time and costs, and strategically, it enhances regional autonomy over trade corridors. So for the landlocked Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and all Central Asian countries are actually landlocked, with Uzbekistan, to the best of my knowledge, being the only double landlocked country in the world, this project is a game changer. It may catalyze industrial development and increase its transit revenues for sure.
Yeah. For a double landlocked country, which is on rare to start with, it holds a lot of potential going forward. Now, we have news just in. The Chinese President Xi Jinping, has just made a statement on the escalating conflicts, tensions in the Middle East, the war between Israel and Iran, whereby President Xi said during his meeting with the President of Uzbekistan, he said that China is deeply concerned about Israel's military operations against Iran, which really caused the rapid escalation of the situation in the Middle East. China opposes any act of aggression that violates the national security and territorial integrity of any country. China called on all parties to act to de-escalate tensions, and China is willing to work with all parties to restore stability in the region. Professor Zhang Xin, what do you make of President Xi's remarks on the Middle East tensions?
President Xi's remarks, I think, first of all, very clearly pinpoint Israel as the one who's the aggressor, who should be take responsibility for any consequence from the military conflict. And that's the first clear message. Second is, I think President Xi reiterates some of the long-held principles of Chinese foreign policy in general, upholding the principle of sovereignty for all countries, regardless of their size, their political influence. China uphold that kind of principle. And third, the message also is very clear. China is willing to work with all parties to de-escalate conflict, to try to bring stability back to the region. And I may say President Xi's specific comments during this Central Asia China summit also brings out even a new layer of significance for Central Asian China collaboration. The whole Eurasia region is going through some very difficult time. Increasingly, geopolitical rivalry, conflicts become a very volatile region. I think to some extent there may be some spillover effect to Central Asia too, right? So I think President Xi's comments in this forum particularly highlight the long-held principle of Chinese foreign policy, always try to promote comprehensive security through development. And I think its collaboration with Central Asia country will be a good example to show whether this kind of approach, this kind of principle actually work in reality.
Yeah. Let's not forget, as Professor Zhang Xin rightly pointed out, Iran shares the border with Tajikistan, with Central Asia. So, none can be spared of a ripple effect, ramifications rather, should tensions escalate further. Now, Professor Tutumlu, what do you make of President Xi's statement on the escalation of tensions between Israel and Iran?
I think there is a very interesting positionality now. I think I very much agree with scholars from Geneva Graduate Institute, conflict fragility management specialists, who basically say that China is indeed a young actor and a mediation actor. And China has a very strong potential in actually mediating very long-term conflicts that have been out there for so many years, where the liberal actors or the Western actors, let's say, they dominated the entire dynamics, which did not really lead to any positive results. We have seen how many years of negotiations, how throughout the many years of negotiations between Israel and Palestinian Authority, not much has actually been done to the people on the ground. And China indeed has the possibility of using very different mediation techniques, very different recognition of different actors who can come to the table and bring these people together and basically create potential agreements. So I am very much in celebration of different approaches and different actors, mediation actors, using this situation as a possibility of really having a change on the ground. Because again, I totally agree with Kuat, who said that we have seen the hypocrisy of the previous world order, in which unfortunately the old techniques do not necessarily work, as they favor very specific people in power.
Yeah, exactly. For too long, might makes right, unfortunately, and also that's the time we have for this edition of World Insight. Thank you all so much for joining us. You can always find us on YouTube, X, and Facebook. I'm Wang Guan, sitting in for Tian Wei. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you soon.